Hello and welcome to Pick and Drive Live. This is a live edition of our weekly podcast where we review and preview the big matches in Australian rugby. I'm your host, Ando, and with me tonight are regulars Mitch.
Hey.
And Rev.
G'day.
Awesome. Well, this is a quick reminder as we begin the show to make sure that you #get involved. We want to make sure that your questions, comments, and banter keep coming throughout the entirety of the show, because what are we without our loyal and fun and engaged listeners? So firstly, to start things off, massive shout out to Sheepy. As always, love your work, mate. Is everyone ready to watch the Wallabies kick the Springboks on Sunday? And Hugh Tyndall replies, yes, I am. So thank you guys for getting in straight away. We're very, very excited to talk about, well, what happened last Sunday, although many of us have tried to exercise that from our memories, as well as what is coming up this weekend. So why don't I start off by taking you through what we're going to be talking about tonight. To begin with, we're going to be covering Bledisloe Cup Game 3 before we then move on to some pretty contentious stuff about Jordie Barrett's red card. We'll then go into some analysis, or a bit of detailed analysis of the game from the weekend. Actually, we've got some clips we want to take you through and talk through some elements of what the Aussies could be improving on for the upcoming game against the Springboks, before we then finish off with our overview / predictions for the upcoming match of the Wallabies versus South Africa. So to begin with, why don't we start off with the really basic point where we just review what happened on the weekend. Rev, we've already spoken about it on the pod, but can you just take us through? Are you still feeling as salty, as upset, as disappointed as we were on actually having to record on Monday night because we just couldn't bring ourselves to do it on Sunday?
No, I think I sort of trudged through so much of the stuff on that Monday just preparing for the podcast. So actually just seeing the score back up on the screen does make me a bit upset. But no, I kind of put it back, to the furthest, deepest channels of my brain. And I haven't really thought about it until right now. So it is kind of nice to be, fresh. But it was a tough match to watch. And, so many things keep getting brought up online. So there are constant reminders. One of the things that I hadn't thought about too much on that Monday was that Barrett missed 5 conversions. So that scoreline really could have been a lot worse. But, new week, new task at hand. So I'm pretty excited.
How good. Now, Mitch, were there any takeaways that you had from the game that have still stuck with you to this point within a week?
Yeah, I just feel like we missed an opportunity. And for everything that happened on the weekend, every opportunity the Wallabies were presented with, we ended up either fumbling it or throwing it away. And we just didn't take anything that was offered to us. So it was a big opportunity that we missed by not winning it in the first game of the year in Perth and on home soil. Not first game of the year on home soil, but first game in Perth for a while. So, it's just like putting it all together, it just feels like we missed a big opportunity. Lots of little things that didn't go our way. But it is a quick turnaround. We've got the World Cup winners coming up on Sunday. So we start looking to that now.
Well, one of the big pieces of news that came out throughout the week was the fact that Jordie Barrett's red card on Marika was rescinded by SANZAAR. It wasn't even WRU getting involved, it was SANZAAR. And so one of the really, really big things that's come out is the idea of whether or not basically what's come out is that they have said it shouldn't have been a red card at all, and the red card has been completely removed from his record. And there was some pretty detailed evidence that New Zealand Rugby went into from a biomechanical specialist to provide evidence for why his foot would be lifting up at that last moment to, I believe, prove it wasn't intentional is the important point there. But what I wanted to just really briefly track through now is a bit of information regarding some of why I think that decision is still wrong and why I actually think that Damon Murphy did make the right decision on the weekend. And yes, I am saying that I know better than SANZAAR. So let's just hold on to that point whilst we begin. So look, let's begin with the basic question of has head contact occurred? The answer is yes. And so we move on to point 2. Was there any foul play? And by the way, this is the law application guidelines that were released, and it's the most up-to-date version of what the referees are using for their adjudication process. Okay. So was there any foul play? So for this, we actually have to move forward to this slide here, where when you actually look in the laws of the game for foul play, The principle is that a player who commits foul play has to be cautioned or temporarily suspended or sent off. So basically penalty, yellow card, red card. Okay. And the action, the point of the law that this falls under is point 11. So 9:11, players mustn't do anything that is reckless or dangerous to others. And so I would argue that what Jordan Barrett has done, or Geordie Barrett has done, is dangerous to Marika Korombete, because it was very, very close to Marika receiving a stud to the eye, which could have had serious implications for his vision and just for his eyesight moving into the future. Now, regardless of whether Geordie Barrett is needing to lift his foot back to balance himself a bit better, was it Geordie's fault that his foot hit Marika's face? And I would be saying yes, because if you actually watch the clip at real time, it's not as though Marika's about to take him out in the air. He actually slows down to wait until the moment that Geordie's about to hit the floor and smash him. So I would be saying that even though there was an intent from Geordie Barrett to hurt Marika Korombete, even if it was an unintentional lifting of the foot, was he still at fault for the fact that his studs nearly copped Marika in the eye? Yes, he's at fault, even if there was an intent. So therefore, what was the degree of danger? I would be arguing that it's high degree of danger, so therefore it's a red card because of the proximity to the eye and the force that it's coming at, because his whole body weight's coming down as well. And so then we move to is there any mitigation? And mitigation considerations, was there a change of the line of sight? No. Sudden significant drop of movement into Marika's face? No. A clear attempt to change height? No. Level of control? Not really. And the final point doesn't matter either. And so when we take all of those into account, I actually believe that there wasn't sufficient mitigation and the red card should have been upheld. And if anybody else needs further proof that I am right, because really this is what this is all about, boys, that I'm right. Nigel Owens has done a piece as well in his Ref's Corner where he has come to a similar conclusion. Rev, do you agree? Do you disagree? Have I gone through the framework appropriately? What do you think?
I didn't pay any attention to what Nigel said, but hearing you say it, now I agree.
Yes.
No, look, I agreed with the red card decision from the outset. I didn't really think it was contentious. I think it was reckless, and there was enough sort of, I guess there was enough clarity around it that I could see it as a red card, and that even in replays it looked like a red card. But I'm also happy that it's been dropped, just because I think it wasn't to that extent where he should be missing out games for it. It was a little bit all over the place. People are drawing a correlation to the elbow that has sort of sidelined Dane Haylett-Petty indefinitely, and how Geordie Barrett's a really dirty and consistently reckless player. I don't find that to be the case. I think David Murphy made the right call. Unfortunately, World Rugby again have gone behind the backs of referees and sort of diminished their opinion. But at the end of the day, I think it's also come up with the best outcome for Geordie Barrett, the All Blacks, and also probably just the game in general.
And there's an interesting comment coming in here from Richard Norton-Taylor. Sour much? I'd actually argue the opposite, mate. I'm not sour at all. I do think that the decision to completely rescind the red card is incorrect, but I'm actually happy that he's not having time off, because I don't think it was intentional, and his actions immediately demonstrate in my mind that it wasn't intentional, which shouldn't factor in, but regardless, I don't think he meant it. And so I do think he deserved a red card, but I'm happy that he didn't have any further consequences from it. So Hugh Tyndall has jumped in. Intent is relevant. I don't agree with that, but that's the way it is. Should be a red and no further suspension. They scrubbed it so he has a clean record. That's the real conspiracy here. We'll stay away from conspiracies, but we agree with the first part, particularly that it should have been a red with no further suspension.
I think the biggest, before we move on, I just want to have something to say on this one. I think the biggest issue we've got with this is now that SANZAR has, or World Rugby and SANZAR has now overturned the last 3 red cards that have been issued, and whether that's in test matches or in Super Rugby Trans-Tasman, it's showing that, first of all, they're not, or it makes us think that the referees aren't following the guidelines that they've outlined. If they're saying that, yes, you've given a red card, it's the wrong option, we've overturned it completely, which now then they didn't mitigate it down. They didn't say it was a yellow card. It should have stuck with that. It should have been a penalty. They said he has nothing. They've overturned the red card completely. So we've seen that against Marika Korombete, we've seen that against Lachie Swinton, and now we've seen it against Geordie Barrett. We have an issue as a game now moving forward that we're not actually, we talk about wanting to protect player welfare and player safety, and any contact with the head needs to be handled in such a strong way, yet we're overturning situations and we're overturning decisions where the framework has been set up to protect that. So it's dangerous. I'm not really sure how this is going to affect the game in the next few years, but it's very interesting to see that we've set this precedent so far.
Couple more comments that are coming in from Tim Foster. Does Barrett only get a suspension if Marika has a serious injury? Really great question. It's sad to say that he probably does get a suspension if Marika is seriously injured from it.
They do say in the framework or the outcome that they said, they took into account the fact that there was no serious injury from the player, which they shouldn't do, because it's not outcome based, first of all, and they've taken into account intent. And Jody didn't intend to hit him, but he still did it. It's still considered reckless, which is different to intent.
Another question that's come in: how doesn't this set a precedent that kicking out is fine? A very dangerous act, in my opinion. There have been some other examples of players that have kicked out that have received significant bans, both in Southern and Northern Hemisphere games as well. I remember the player, was it a Hurricanes player that got Cam Clark? Highlanders.
Yeah.
Naboro? Cam Clark. Yeah. And so he received a pretty lengthy suspension as well. It's happened in the US too. Sorry, it's happened in Europe as well. So I think this one, because it's Sansa, it's been very well argued. I'm hoping this isn't going to be precedent. Now, finally, before we move on into our next section, where Rev's going to take us through some analysis, have this random bloke, Dave Chilton, saying "drop bang."
Just gets in early, doesn't he?
Come on, gets in early. We don't want to hear that negativity. So, Rev, we're going to be moving through to some of the analysis, mate.
Let's do it. We've got a few clips from the weekend that are worthwhile showing. So this will dig up some painful memories, I'm sure. I'll start it off with two plays, one from the All Blacks and one from the Wallabies. And really the intent with this is just to try and showcase the difference between how we see space and how we capitalise on a break. So I might start with TJ Perenara's intercept of a Rob Valentini offload. We just want to get a bit of a look for how they...
Sorry, it might be a little bit choppy, but you should be able to get it. Or is this a wrong clip for you, mate?
No, I think this is coming up to the right bit.
The time.
Yeah, it's coming up.
Time
to come out.
Yeah. And this is good because it's showing sort of the build up to it. And one of the good things is this is off an attacking play. The Wallabies are in the All Blacks 22. It's all looking quite good. They've been burned a little bit before because at this point they've already thrown that intercept from Phillip. So they're trying not to be too wide with their passes. They are trying to do the nice tight ones with the forwards. Now, as they spread across the field here, what happens is they're building up for a nice little break where they get some nice interplay between the forwards. Has that gone back to the start of the video?
Yeah, I believe it has. Apologies.
Okay.
Let me have a crack at it. You keep talking, Rev, and I'll have a go at it.
In any case, even if the video doesn't come up, the part that I'm sure we'll all remember is Valentini offloads and TJ Perenara plucks it, spectacularly. Makes a really good break, and the awesome thing that he does is he notices he's not going to be able to run around anyone. He can see that there's defenders in front of him, but he's got the spatial awareness to recognize that George Bridge is right on the other side of the field and has acres of space in front of him. So he puts in this perfectly weighted, perfectly placed kick, which Bridge picks up and scores really effortlessly. And to me, I just thought, gee, that is a team that knows exactly where all their players are. They've got such good vision of the field, and they can just turn really attacking opportunities from the other team into their own attacking opportunities.
This next
one.
So he comes to
Valentini gets it, offload, and just plucked perfectly. And it's this break. So he's got so many Wallabies around him. Look at that. There's 5 players in gold jerseys, kicks off his left foot, and sees George Bridge in space. And to me, that's beautiful. That's their second best try of the match. It's just so well worked.
And it's in the 72nd minute as well.
And yeah, exactly. They should be run off their legs, but they've got players coming off the bench doing brilliant, dare I say, orgasmic things. And what I think...
That's high praise.
It is very impressive.
What's the next video you're after?
Well, and the next break is the Banks break, because I want to compare it to our own similar opportunity, where I think it might have been Scott Barrett takes a hit up. We turn the ball over in contact, and I think, this is a great opportunity for the Wallabies. Look, Karevi is running with it. He gets fended in the offload away. Banks is in space. He's our fastest player, and Ioane's chasing him down, but Tate McDermott is in the perfect position. So that spot there, he's a few meters behind. He is ready for what should be a really straightforward midfield grubber. Doesn't need to be
Yeah, that's
perfectly
Kellaway.
accurate.
That's Kellaway. Yep.
Is
So
that
it's
Kellaway
Kellaway on his
inside? Sorry?
inside.
Yeah, it's
Yeah. So
Kellaway.
just on the
Apologies.
inside here, that's Kellaway.
Sorry, Kellaway's inside him, and I just think that is, and again, it's what Kellaway does perfectly. It's how he scored that really nice try at the start of the year. Was he knows where to be, so he's not making the line breaks, but he's just prepared for the option. And twice you could just see he was fed up because Banks has made this perfect break. He just has to kick it anywhere in field, and he'll win the race to it. Much the same as how Alessio does that crossfield kick, and he is saying, "Well, no, just hands will do it." I don't know why he put it through.
Yep.
We've got smart players, but unfortunately, we just couldn't capitalize on breaks the same way New Zealand can. And that, to me, is one of our biggest things, is every mistake we make, New Zealand are on top of. Every mistake they make, we let them get away with it. And that will be the biggest thing to try and overcome against the Springboks this week.
So just bringing up a comment here from Dave Shilton again. Put it on the boot infield, agreed, and then bringing up your next comment, drop Banks. So we may well get to that point later. All right.
Yeah,
so the next point that I believe we're going to move to now was something from Mitch in terms of the disallowed tries that happened during the game. Is that right, mate?
Yeah. So my point's very similar to what Rev just went through. I'll add it in. So this is Samu's try, or Samu's set up a disallowed try. So he breaks through the center of the ruck here, ruck in hyphenations, because technically it's been ruled as a ruck, but there was no plays from New Zealand bound. So he breaks through. And very similar to what Mitch was just saying, or Rev was just saying in his last point, is when our Wallabies players make space or make a line break, they don't seem to know what to do with the ball. Marika Koroibete is very keen to score points, and he's probably a little bit too eager to score points in this game, ultimately leading to our 2 tries being disallowed. But Karevi makes line break, which is brilliant, and it's coming. I've clicked play, so it's just lagging. Here we go. Yep. Offloads to Koroibete, who's there, gets tackled short. But the thing I wanted to pull up, it might cause a bit of an issue, but if you go back and look at that last frame, there's no Wallabies player within space for Koroibete to offload to. So he's done well because he's on Karevi's hit when he makes the initial break. But once he makes that line break, there's no one in support. Now, when the All Blacks conversely make a line break, there's always 2 or 3 players there that are ready for offload, ready for someone to keep the ball alive. And that's ultimately what ends up disallowed. Not that in itself, but we end up not getting a try allowed. So we go back. Let's skip forward a little bit.
And so the other disallowed try, that was Koroibete going through the bottom of the maul as it's going over the line.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yep.
Yep. So yeah, penalty here. Go to the line out. Executed perfectly.
Execute a line out for once. That's good. It's a good shift to the back of the line out as well.
Koroibete gets the ball, sort of crawls on the ground and ends up getting over the line, whichever we've said no try because he's double movement on the ground. The interesting one I wanted to go back and show in this one, if we can see it, the internet being a little bit funny, but this is a set play. Now, it's interesting that we don't go for just a regular maul try and just try and drive it over the line. Koroibete is standing at the front of the line out when we throw that ball in, and he comes in and takes the ball completely. Now, I don't know specifically if this is a set play by the Wallabies or it's Marika Koroibete wanting to get on the board. Because Falaufinga comes through like he always does and binds on the back of the maul, but he doesn't have the ball. Koroibete's actually got the ball ahead of him. So then the maul sort of stops or collapses and Koroibete goes to ground, and then grubbers and sort of shimmies over the line, which is disallowed. But see, there's Falaufinga standing at the back. At this play, he hasn't even actually committed to the maul, where we normally see him come in and steal the ball and get that strong position and drive over. So again, I don't know whether this is a situation of Koroibete wants to get involved and score the try and get his name on the score sheet, or it's a set play. But it's one of the only options we get in the game to really go to our maul and be effective, and we butchered it.
And then the worst thing, David Havili does the same thing for the All Blacks 2 minutes later. So he's a back that joins the back of the maul, except he scores off it. It's just again, if we can relate it to my first point before, the things that we try and do against the All Blacks that just fall short, they seem to nail.
That's right.
And that might lead pretty well, Endo, to some of the videos you want to analyse. The first one being that charge down and sort of break that comes from it.
Well, what I actually thought was, because the internet's being a bit of a bum at the moment, we might skip forward, if that's okay, to the forward play. Because one of the things that, Mitch, do you want to get it up, or are you okay if I
Yep, I'm getting it up.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much. Get ready to stop it at a couple of points, if that's all right.
Yep.
So what we're going to be looking at here is just some of the ways in which our general play is not being particularly effective. So here we have a play out the back. Banks, we'll just wait for it to catch up. We have a quick dart from the ruck here from Tate. I'm just waiting for it to catch up, boys. So the next play will be Tate making a little dart from the ruck. Once, I think it's Ikitau has got some pretty good meters over the front. So McDermott will make a run up, and as soon as the forward runner gets the ball off Folau Fainga, can you pause it there? And you'll see that basically it's not working. Let's just take it off and I'll talk through it instead. The internet's just being a bum, so let's just cancel that. Basically, one of the main critiques that I had of the game on the weekend, and we were going to pause it there, maybe we'll do some still frames next time, but basically our forward play is not being particularly effective, in that we're not giving our players enough options when they have the ball. So normally you have a pod system, 3-2-3, depending upon the setup of the back line. But normally you'll have the one forward who's at the point of the pod, and they usually have a player on the inside, on the inside or the outside to be popping it to. But the problem that we're having is that too often the supporting players within that pod are not at a close enough distance to be a realistic option for the pass right before the gain line or right before the attacking line. And so what that means is that the defensive line, as soon as the forward in that pod gets the ball, they know that that Wallabies player is 8 times out of 10, 9 times out of 10, just going to be hitting it up. And so it enables the defense to have 1 or 2 men in a tackle, get a dominant hit pushing back, and therefore we're losing our forward momentum. And that's when you see, and there were going to be some good examples in that clip. I'm a bit annoyed it's not working, but that's when you see when they go for that play, that cut back play out the back of that forward pod, often to Karevi within this game, the outer New Zealand defense is able to then push up because they're not having to retreat back because we've got the momentum from the previous hit up. And so it's frustrating because it's a simple thing. If you keep, well, maybe it's not so simple. I haven't played professional rugby, but if the forward runner is able to keep the ball in 2 hands until the last minute to at least provide the defense with multiple pictures, and if those support runners are closer in providing realistic passing options for them, it's making the defense choose. And Morgan Turanui used to always say that this is the bodies in motion idea. If you can paint multiple pictures in attack that the defense has to respond to, they're going to be less efficient within their defensive plays. And it's something that we're just not doing. And it's something that I believe is super simple to be addressing. And I actually think that with the weekend's match coming up against the Springboks, with the amazing speed of their umbrella defense out wide, basically cutting off any wide passing options, that actually this is going to have to be the way that we go moving forward into this match on Sunday, because if we're trying to play wide, we're just going to continually lose ground to the Springboks defense.
Yeah. No, I think you absolutely nailed that. And that's, especially as you mentioned that umbrella defense, this is going to be the first match Lacanio Am's played against the Wallabies, and he must just be licking his lips watching the same, games we are, because every time we seem to go wide, we're just making a bit of a mess of it. And I think it's something that Alex North has just thrown in the chat as well, that is a nice little reference to that, is, as you said, Ando, as we get Tate around the ball and as he's around the ruck, we're not really making a massive use of the forwards that we have available, because we're not getting massive amounts of forwards making those massive hits in the ruck or trying to steal turnover ball. But at the same time, we don't have those big runners that are options off the 9 or even off the 10 further out wide. It seems to be really just maybe a hit up here or there, but otherwise give it to Karevi. So assuming that he's named again this week, it's going to be very interesting to see how we adapt to that with the bigger bodies of that South African pack.
Yep. Yeah, particularly this week, it seemed like we were more worried, particularly in our loose forwards, of setting up that screen or that the screen to then make it look like we're going for a pick and drive, but then throwing it out the back. And we did that so many times, it wasn't fooling anyone, and it was pretty obvious. So it was ineffectual in that we weren't actually taking the ball to the line, and then Karevi just gets the ball at the back of the screen and then hits the line, and the All Blacks just stand off and wait for him.
Yeah, that probably covers a lot of our analysis. Do we want to get Mitch going through our ladder for the Rugby Championship, and we'll have a bit of a look at some of the fixtures over this weekend.
All right, so looking at the standing for the Rugby Championship so far, so we've got New Zealand squarely in first place on plus 52 points. They've got 10 points that they've accrued because they've won every game so far. So they've played 2, won 2. We've got South Africa, who's also played 2 games, and they've won 2 as well. They're on 9 points with a plus differential of 39 points. We then have the Pumas, or Argentina, coming in third with, again, they've played 2 games, haven't won any yet, but they've got a negative points differential of negative 39, whereas Australia is coming in fourth, and we've got a negative points differential of minus 52. So it's not...
Do you remember any of our predictions at the start of the Rugby Championship? I'm pretty sure I said something to the effect of we need to beat Argentina twice, and we need to get 1 win against South Africa or New Zealand.
Or the All Blacks.
to consider it a success. Well, things have not started well, if I can say that.
But we still could do that. We still could do that. It doesn't look likely, but we still could do that.
Good comment here from Harry Dale. Where do we think our for and against will end up, considering minus 52 is our worst ever?
Yeah, this is going to be tough because I think we're going to have to be lower than that. I mean, I can't, even if we beat Argentina, I can't imagine a world in which we beat them by more than South Africa beat us. And 2018 was a pretty poor year for us. So if we go worse than negative 52, it'll be nearly impressive. How about that? It'll be statistically really significant. So that'll be impressive.
I just feel like they'll be continuing the Waratahs tradition of having the worst year ever and breaking record after record for biggest defeats, biggest losses, most consecutive losses, all that type of thing. If anything, I'll be kind of impressed, and it will just add to the joy, which has been 2021 for me.
Well, let's keep things into perspective. We did win our first series in however many years earlier this year against France. I know a lot of people have wiped that from the memory. So we're already sitting in a place that better than we have for a few other years so far. And we have realistically only played New Zealand. So we haven't played South Africa in how many years now? How many has it been since we played 2. South Africa? 2, 3 years?
2.
Yeah. And Argentina, last year we saw that they were a bit of a bogey team for us. We weren't able to really beat that deadlock, but hopefully moving forward, we have some good players coming back. We need to be positive. So looking forward to this weekend, we have the first doubleheader. It is being played at Cbus Super Stadium on the Gold Coast, and both of these games are being played on Sunday night. So not Saturday night, Sunday night, which I initially thought it was Saturday and then realized it was Sunday. So that's changed my whole plans for the weekend. But we've got New Zealand hosting Argentina at 5 o'clock or 5:05 on Sunday afternoon. And then South Africa hosting Australia in Australia, which is a weird thing to see, 8:05 p.m. kickoff at Cbus Super Stadium on the Gold Coast.
Rev, are you going to be heading down to those games?
Yeah, I'll be on the coast on the Sunday, helping move for some of my parents' stuff. So I'm hoping to duck down to Robina straight afterwards and catch those games. So that'll be really good.
I'm so jealous. 3 consecutive weekends of rugby, although one of them is in Townsville. But that's still pretty impressive.
We were sitting last year saying how good it was going to be that Sydney was going to host this festival of rugby, and unfortunately it didn't come to be. But now Queensland's taken it. Well done to Queensland.
You're welcome, Queensland. You're welcome. So from Conrad Mackindo, we need more teams in a rugby championship. Constantly running into the brick walls that are South Africa and New Zealand is impeding our development. There's a big part of me that agrees with that and thinks that the inclusion of Japan and Fiji has got to be in the future, and hopefully the near future. Rev, what are you thinking is going to be the outcome of the New Zealand, or what are your initial thoughts for New Zealand versus Argentina?
I think the pressure's definitely on, given Argentina got their first win ever last year. I think that really is such a massive, duck to break for the Argentinians. I also think it does mean that they're not going to come in with the same passion, because that is a real big thing to try and want to beat. And now that they've got that there isn't that same need to prove that wrong. And at the same time, New Zealand will probably also be a lot more wary because traditionally they've sort of been competitive for 60 minutes and then have been able to pull away from the Pumas. So to me, I think New Zealand are going to win this one. I think the interesting thing is Argentina don't make the same amount of mistakes as Australia do. So while they may not be, they're not at the same level as the All Blacks, they're also not going to give them the same amount of opportunities. So I think this actually might be the first chance that New Zealand get this year to really try and test themselves against a team that is a bit more, not structured, but is a little bit more willing to keep offloads in tight and make sure that they're making decisions that actually benefit them and not the other team. So I'm very keen for this match, but I still think New Zealand probably get up by at least 2 scores.
Mitch, are you of a similar persuasion?
Yeah, I just don't see, with the lead up and the way the All Blacks are going at the moment, I just don't see them being tripped up by this Argentinian side. No disrespect to Argentina at all, but they weren't that impressive in the first 2 rounds of the Rugby Champs against South Africa. And we did see that up against a side like South Africa, as Rev just mentioned, they didn't make as many mistakes as Australia did, but South Africa scored off a lot of their mistakes. And the few mistakes that they did make, they scored off. And the All Blacks, we know and we have seen, can do that tenfold. So Argentina pretty much need to be spotless and perfect to really push New Zealand, because this team is another level than it was last year. The All Blacks, that is. So I don't see it going any other way, and I imagine it'd be quite a high score. So I'm probably saying All Blacks by 25.
Big. Hugh Tyndall is kind of a similar persuasion as well. All Blacks should carve this weekend. Argentina were punished by the Box on turnover mistakes, just like Australia. Unless they tighten up and play tight, it could be another drubbing. If you look at some of the passes that went to ground within the most recent match for the Argies, they were some of the key moments that the Box were able to use to actually get some tries down, rather than just applying the pressure and being ruthless with their penalty conversions like they had been previously. Mitch, do you want to take us through the Wallabies and South Africa game now?
Yeah, so how...
Sorry, I meant to say Rev. I apologize. I meant to say Rev there.
I thought so.
Rev, over to you, mate.
Rev, you go.
So luckily enough, the Springboks put out their team quite a while ago, so we've got a bit of a chance to sort of run the rule over them and see how they're shaping up this week. And it'll be interesting to see how our team sort of stacks up when it eventually gets named. But as you can see on the screen, if you're watching along, the Springboks have just named such a formidable pack. Like, they've got experience throughout, and then their backs are so exciting. Going through 1 to 15, we've got Stephen Kitchoff, Bongi and Banambi, and Franz Malherbe, which is just a heavy, awesome set piece front row that's going to cause so much damage unless we really hit the ground running. Eben Etzebeth and Lou de Jager in the locks, which is 2 of the best locks in the world, with a pretty all-star back row of Sia Khaleesi, Franco Mostert, and Duane Vermeulen. Mostert, I think a few people that might not follow the game as intently might think, oh, this is good, it's not Peter Sefter-Toit, but really, he's just as hard a worker. Like, he does so much of the grunt work, and he's a really good like-for-like fix, that blindside jersey for them, given their different system. Through the back line, we've got Faf de Klerk and Andre Pollard. A really established combo. De Klerk coming back, I think, for his first game in sort of 3 or so matches, missing out with injury. Damien Diolande and Lucanio Am in the centres, forming a really nice partnership despite Am's relative inexperience. Makazole, Mapimpi, and Spoo and Kosi on the wing, filling in for Cheslin Colby, who's out injured, and then Billy LaRue at fullback. We're seeing a really nice blend of sort of the Stormers front row and a few players that have played for Stormers throughout the back 5, as well as a really heavy Sharks flavour to the back line as well. The interesting thing, they've got the 6-2 split, but more importantly, they've gone for 3 loosies on the bench. So between their bench of Malcolm Marks, Oxen Shea, Vincent Koch, Marco van Staden, Quagga Smith, Jasper Visa, Herschel Yanchis, and Damien Valemsa, they've really gone for just a mobile pack, and I think a lot of that's to try and cover Duane Vermeulen, who's making his first start since the Rugby World Cup final, I believe. So plenty to go through.
They're just such a massive side, aren't they? Like, even with a couple of the changes that they brought on, their most inexperienced player had, 49 caps to the name? Something like that. Yeah,
the least experienced for was Bongi and Manambi, who we would kill for the Wallabies. And it's just further insult to injury when we see Malcolm Marks on the bench, who as well we would kill to have for in our team. So, like, it's a massive gulf in experience between these two sides, and the Box have been pretty humble to not mention it too much in a lot of the build-up, but it really is going to be a big determining factor. While we don't have the Wallabies team, we have also named our predicted team. So we've put the 3 best minds of Australian rugby together and have come up with something that looks pretty nice on the eyes. So for us, we're hoping to see the Brumbies front row reinstated of Slipper, Fainga and Alatoa, with Isaac Rodder promoted to start at lock and Matt Phillip joining him in the locks. And then a return to old with Rob Valentini, Michael Hooper and Harry Wilson in the back row. Ideally, we see the Reds combination of Tate McDermott and James O'Connor reignited, with Hunter Paisami and Simon Karevi in the centres, Marika Corambetti and Andrew Callaway on the wings, and Reece Hodge at fullback. And really inadvertently, it does give a really nice blend of sort of Reds players and Rebels players making up the whole back line, which could work out quite well for cohesion, given we've had a bit of chop and change. On the bench, we'd hope to see Brendan Pangaromosa come back from injury with Angus Bell and Taniela Tupou, Darcy Swain getting his spot at lock, and Pete Samu, Nick White, Noah Lolosio, adding a bit of Brumbies flavour off the bench with impact, as well as Geordie Pataya, who is hopefully the Mr. X Factor, if he can come on and deliver like he has previously, but perhaps not quite at test level. So very keen to see a team like this, ideally exactly like this, but hopefully a team like this come through tomorrow when it gets named.
Very importantly, we've got a comment here from Steve Lenthal. What? No Quaid at 10? Mitch, what say you?
I think last week was Quaid's week. Potentially next week, depending on how we go this week. If we get absolutely pumped by the Springboks, James O'Connor's not ready, and Noah Alessio is still playing like he did last week, maybe we look at bringing Quaid in. I still think Hodge would get the shout over Quaid, realistically. I know this is probably very tongue-in-cheek, this question, but
it definitely is from Steve, yes.
I don't see Quaid getting a shot at the Rugby Champs from now on, even if he did. We don't know if he's travelled to Queensland or not, but don't see him getting too much there. I'll quickly throw this question because it has been, and that's what I was going to say. Why did we select Tupou off the bench and not start him this week, guys?
For me, it is the case that Tupou has never impressed me as a starter for the Wallabies. His best games from my memory, and someone's welcome to prove me wrong, but his best games from my memory have always come off the bench, and his most damaging moments have always been in the latter stages of the game. And so I personally think that when you've got two like very, very highly regarded props like Alan Alatoa and Nella, I think that really is spoilt for choice, and there's no issue with starting Alan Alatoa when you can be bringing Nella on for his impact. I think that Nella's a bit more explosive, and I'd personally be wanting to bring him on at like 40-45 minutes, maybe even do a halftime swap or something like that. I think that would be a great idea. I think that they've been leaving it a little bit late, around the 60th minute, to be bringing him on. I think he should be coming on earlier than that, but personally, that's why I made that call. Rev, yourself?
For me, I think, especially for this game, we're coming up against two of the best scrummaging props in the world. Franz Malherbe eats other props for breakfast. Like, he's ridiculously big. He's so good. He's so powerful in the scrum. And Stephen Kitchoff, who'll be his opposite, is no worse. Like, he's probably more renowned for his dynamic ball play, but really, he can just take over from anyone. Like, he's just replaced Beast, and really, it's a miracle that Beast was able to keep him at bay, because he's one of probably the best loose-head prop in the world. Now, the strength that I see for Tupou is that his running game is really impressive. He's pretty good in the scrum, but like, we want him sort of off the 9 or 10, making those big runs. To me, that still has more impact when he's doing that against slightly tired bodies. So I want him coming on between the 45th and 50th minute, when the teams are a little bit jaded. They've had the half time, but they're still, dealing with the starting players. You see that 135 kilogram frame come in. That makes a big difference.
Completely agreed there. Now, I don't think there's anything particularly contentious. Maybe our 9-10 combination. Personally, I was a fan of bringing Nick White back on into the starting line just because I think that the speed and accuracy of his passing may well be a little bit more beneficial. It also wouldn't surprise me personally if we saw Hodge at 10 if O'Connor is still unavailable. So if O'Connor's unavailable, it wouldn't surprise me to see Hodge there and Banks still at 15, or Wellesea to keep his place, because I think Rennie is building for the future and is willing to continue to back Wellesea because really there's no other out and out 10 in the squad right now.
There is one other theory.
It is a future option.
There is one other theory that Christy Doran has released earlier this week that's been floating around, that even if James O'Connor is fit, Dave Rennie still potentially might pick Lolesio at 10 to start with and bring James O'Connor in off the bench. Now, what do we think of that option?
I assume that's bringing to ease him back in after his injury. And if that's the reasoning, yeah, sure. If it's not, I'd prefer Jock to be starting and Lolesio to challenge the line a little bit more later in the game. I personally agree with Sheepy. Bring on Will Harrison at 10. If only he was in a squad. He's trapped in New South Wales.
The beaches somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah, and Steve Lengthal understandably asks, he won't have played for 105, or Jock won't have played for 105 days. Happy for him to start or ease off in the bench. Rev?
To me, if he's healthy and Rennie deems him, good enough to be in the 23, then he has to start. He's our best fly half, so to me, it's a no-brainer. If he's under any injury cloud, don't put him in the 23 at all. To me, there's no world in which Jock comes off the bench because he is our best player. So he's either starting at 10 or it's Lolesio at 10, and we've got versatile options like Hodge if he's not listed at fullback, or Paisami or Ikitau, someone like that off the bench in their place.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, guys, we're running out of time. We're nearly up to our 45-minute cutoff point where we all turn into pumpkins or turn from pumpkins. I'm not sure what it is. But either way, what we want to do is move into the final kind of our predictions for the result this weekend. So asking you, our loyal listeners, what is your pick for the final result of Australia versus South Africa? So could I please get you guys to type your results in, type your predictions in. But Mitch, to start with you, mate, what do you think Australia versus South Africa go?
It's a little bit hard to say right now just because we don't know the team. There's a lot of variables that can sway my opinion. If James O'Connor's fit and ready, whether we're going to have Banks back at fullback, bring Hodge somewhere in. I'm not sure what team we're going to get for Sunday. But at the same time, I really don't see we're going to need a massive improvement from the last few weeks to really challenge this Springbok side. And I just don't see that happening, unfortunately, with the players we currently have. So I'm going to go Springboks by 10.
Springboks by 10. Okay, Rev?
Box by 18.
Box by 18. Fair enough. I'll split you and go box by 15. So, yeah, we're all pretty solid that the Box are going to be getting up. But now let's go through and see what other people are saying. So we got Hugh Tyndall that for this result is saying Box by 5, but he's also picked the All Blacks by 15. Harry Dale says South Africa 24, Australia 17. He's put the numbers to it. Well done. So what's that? That's by 7, if my maths is correct. Brian Knight says the Tars are going to get up. So good on you, mate. They'll get up one day.
He's replying to the Will Harrison thing from before.
No, he's not. He's saying the Tars got up. Harry Dale says his wife doesn't know and doesn't care. Mine too, mate. It's an eternal disappointment, but we move on, don't we?
My wife is South African, so we'll see how that goes.
Michael Gardner, being overly hopeful, Australia by 2. Argentina are going to upset the Kiwis and then Box by 12. So Matt from Boar Productions, that is a big call there. The Argentinians are going to get up. Zach Chen states Aussies by 7. Alex North 33-24 to South Africa. And then Australia has got glimmers of hope, but will still lose painfully. Tim Foster, South Africa by 15. Conrad Mackindo, Australia by 15. Wow.
Hey, good man.
Yeah, get in.
More dedicated than us. We're all on the Box bandwagon.
Yeah, well, I'm not on a bandwagon. I'm just in a...
He's picking with his heart. He's me last week.
Brian Knight states, "You want me to crash my train with that comment?" And then he does say the Box by 14. So it seems like the loyal listeners are pushing forward with the Box victory. And yes, Conrad, we have to believe. Whilst my head is saying that the Box are going to get up, I will be cheering on the Wallabies loud and proud. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for your time tonight. It has been an absolute pleasure and a privilege to be here with you. We'll be having our normal pod as normal, either on Sunday night recording or Monday night recording, depending
It'll have to
upon
be Monday
how
night
bad the
recording.
game is. Monday
I don't
night
think-
recording is then?
Kickoff is 8:05 on a Sunday. I don't think, unless we're going live, it'll be
Ooh, who
Sunday.
knows,
So
but probably a Monday
our
night
Tuesday
recording.
morning, 6:00.
Tuesday morning, 6 a.m. Make sure that you get involved. It has been an absolute pleasure. Have a wonderful evening. Bye.